at it again. You just want to, okay, they do this front. What am I going to do here? And you visually, these 2 hours before the game, you're visually, mentally going through that game plan and what you're going to do. And I tell you, man, I just put you in a place, man, like no other. It's so euphoric because it's what you do. It's what you are paid to do. You're a grown man playing a kid's game, getting a king's ransom. Ow! I'm fired up.
17 work days on the year, and this is one of them, so they're all big in the NFL. All right, we got a lot to get to. Before we get into what we're going to see this week, let's take a look back at last week. 49ers lose 19-10 in Chicago. Give me your takeaway.
Yeah, I think that the sky's not falling, but you have to feel like that. And it's crazy because, like you said, it's only 17 weeks. You only had 17 games. But I'm telling you, in the interim of this, when you lose even the first week, you're like, God, it's just that pit you have in your stomach and the mindset. So you go through last week and you watch that game, and there's plays that you saw and I saw, Larry, and we said, man, you make this play. 99 yards in penalties. You have to think about it. As a team, as a coaching staff, as an organization, you're saying, we had 99 yards, or near 100 yards in penalties. That was on us. That's unacceptable. To their 28. 70 yards of field position lost. They hit in yards, I like to call them. So you got to reflect on that, and then you reflect on those individual plays. Your assignment. What did I do wrong? What tackle did I miss? God, if we would have made this sack here, if we don't hit this. So you go through that week of going through that, playing that in your head, because you got to think about what you did wrong and what you did right, so you don't want to make sure you don't repeat those things. So that's what the week was about. It was about, let's make corrections. Yeah, we got to forget about it, but we have to learn from our mistakes, and how do we push forward? This week, it's like, okay, next team up, that's the Seattle Seahawks. What are the things that we're going to do? Establish the game plan, go through it. Do I know the game plan better than I knew it against Chicago for the same outcome is different? First one have the same outcome.
You know, it was such a weird game from the standpoint. Niners ran 11 more plays. They were plus 127 in total yards. So the Niners totally dominated the game. The 49ers offensively held the ball for 7+ minutes, a 7+ minute advantage. And, you know, at one point they had a 10-0 lead, but they wind up having a couple busted plays, 12 penalties, too many missed tackles. Trey Lance had too many inaccurate passes, and they wind up losing by 9 points in the second half. Now, one of the things I want to get to is this overwhelming reaction to Trey Lance. Give me your thoughts on that, because I'll tell you the one thing, when I looked at it, I decided I wanted to look at, you know, the play that was talked about universally this week as Trey's bad play. And that play was the pass play to Tyler Kroft in the first half.
Wide open.
You talk to anybody and they'll say, you know what? Trey missed that. It was wide open. Should have thrown a touchdown there. You know, people use that as the example of his inaccuracy. If you go back to that play, you had Kroft, who may have had a step and a half on two defenders, a little bit of a corner route. Trey overthrew him by about 2 to 3 yards. If you go back and roll that tape back, and I was looking at this last night, you go watch that play. First of all, you got a third-string tight end who may have a step or two on two defenders and didn't know if he wanted to look over his right shoulder or left shoulder, so he kind of got caught in between. So he's not really running full bore. That's one. Two, you got the sideline to contend with. But then you go back to the quarterback. Trevis Gibson was barreling down on Trey. Trey saw him in his peripheral and got it off anyway, but people have made that like it was just a layup. Trey Lance took a hit by Trevis Gibson on his throwing arm or to the side, his right side of his body, immediately upon release. This was not nearly the layup that people will lead you to begin to believe. My point is just this. We get so... Everybody just starts making a point, and then all of a sudden it's just everybody, the rest of the media and the fans, everybody just repeats it. Well, he had that one to Kroft. He shouldn't have blown that. Even you go look at that. Go look at that pass play. You talk about a third-string tight end with one step in a fairly small window with Gibson with no blocker barreling down and you're seeing him in your peripheral, he still got it off. I mean, the fact that he got it as close as he did, to me, was an accomplishment. I just think it's odd that people use that play as, like, the license to be incredibly critical of Trey's accuracy.
Yeah.
When on that play, I think he pretty much did what he could do.
It's amazing that you break it down like that, Larry, because I look at it in the same way, but I look at it in a different lens. For me, it's like everyone's talking about that play, but no one's talking about Debo, who's all world, who just got paid to give me I'll give you what it was, 80 million. I give you reasons why you don't fumble that ball, but no one talks about that because he's a proven commodity. He's shown you that Debo, we know how tough he is, and this is not to blast blame anywhere, but here's a guy that you just gave the money to. Here's a guy that you know is tough and physical and make things happen. What's a bigger fumble? What's a bigger? He missed that. I get it, but you had your workhorse, your guy that he makes that touchdown or don't fumble the ball. That's a different, but no one really, it's all about Trey. Why? Because he's new and he's young and he's not established in the league. So everyone's going to, if Jimmie would have played, and could Jimmie get out of certain things that you saw Trey was able to do? Does Kyle Shanahan call on 3rd and 10, or it's, that it's the slippery in the field? Does Kyle Shanahan call a quarterback draw? Are you in that situation punting? We've seen Jimmie in tough situations like that. Could he escape at certain things that Trey wasn't able to do? So when you have quarterbacks that aren't proven in this league, Jimmie too, that's proven, but that's everyone's kind of up and down on, that don't think he's necessarily the guy. He couldn't play bad, and everyone said, when can we get Trey? Look at what you have. Now, Tom Brady has missed some passes. We just watching that. He fumbled the ball against the Saints. The center quarterback Saints, they're getting ready to go and score. Go for it on 4th. That happens. Aaron Rodgers last week got sacked, got hit, missed guys.
Joe Burrow threw 3 picks last week.
Joe Burrow threw 3. So, but no one's talking about those guys, benching those guys. That's the thing, Larry, for me. It's not about the Trey. It's about, because everyone is already, their perception, what they already want, they're demonizing this guy. And that's why it's just like, dude, you look around and look at all these quarterbacks that everyone talk are just great, and I can show you a play just like Trey that everyone from the Hall of Famer, from arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play, Tom Brady, we know that, show you his plays. I can show you Aaron Rodgers' play. You go Joe Burrow's, like you said, 3 interceptions. But there's one guy that no one's even talking about. So now you're a quarterback. You're in the pocket. The field's wet. Guys are running. If you run a 4.8, you're probably running a 5.1 out there on that field. Wouldn't you not agree with the way the field
was saturated before the anthem?
Exactly. So now I got a guy tight end that runs 4.5, and now I got a tight end that runs 4.7. If Kittle's there, if that's the same ball, I'm betting right now, and I know you are, Larry, Kittle's making that catch. He's running underneath that. He's not going to take his ball.
We're also talking about a guy in Croft who's his first year with the 49ers. Yes. This isn't a guy that Trey has reps with. Trey has probably very few practice reps with Croft.
Right.
The point is that every negative is just magnified on this player, and now it's become this media 3-ring circus. Now
that's easy to talk about. That's easy.
I mean, it's low hanging. We love the quarterback and the head coach in the NFL. There was a report, Jason LaConfora, that people who know the thinking of Kyle Shanahan have indicated that if Trey and the 49ers don't win today against Seattle, that it will be Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback for Week 3 against Denver. Now, Mike Garafolo, you might have heard JD mention at the end of his hour there from the NFL Network, has said that there's no credence to the report that Trey will be out as the starter if the 49ers lose today. To me, that would be incredible knee-jerk. We'll get into that in just a few minutes. But before we do, let's talk about the Niners offense. We got about 10 minutes more in this segment. What do you expect to see today from the Niner offense? There's not going to be a George Kittle. We're not going to see Daniel Brunskill. Jeff Wilson went for 2.4 a carry in the second half. Are we going to see Ty Davis-Price? Are we going to see Jordan Mason? They signed Marlon Mack to the practice squad. I don't think they're going to elevate him today. What do you expect to see from this 49er offense going against a Seattle defense that has switched from a 4-3 cover 3 look to now they go with Big Al Woods in the middle? They're a 3-4 with more split safety looks. How do the Niners attack this defense offensively?
Well, I think that now this is going to come down to the guard and center situation. When you're going against a 3-4 compared to a 4-3, 4 down linemen, you got 4 down linemen, you got 4 hard down linemen, and against a 3-4, you have 3 down linemen. You have a center, 2 defensive ends, and you have 4 linebackers because you think that my athletic guys are my linebackers. That's why people go to 3-4. 3-4 guys can drop, they can come off the corners, and now you have 3 defensive linemen. When you're playing against a 3-4, I'm telling you, center and guards are crucial because now the nose guard is there. He's the only D line. And now if the guard and center, that's called when those 2 guys together, the tray block. So now they're acing up. You have the guard in the center. If they can control the nose guard, now you got to realize, look at the hole. If they can control the center, now they ace block up. Ace means that they acing up to the Mike linebacker. So now you have the guard and center, control the nose guard, and then play up to the linebacker. There are huge running opportunities against a 3-4. My preference as a fullback, I love playing against a 3-4 every day out of the week compared to a 4-3 because you have more space, because when the ends are on the tackle, you have your guards are usually uncovered. You got more create more space so I could get through there. Linemen can take bigger splits, and now you can go up to get the linebacker, and that's what I was paid to do. Give me a 3-4. So I expect this team, the 49ers, to run the ball. And run the ball with success, because now you got all-pro tackle, and we Hall of Fame tackle. Now he's one-on-one, and now he can kick somebody's butt because he can take that tackle and erase him. Now you're going to have bigger lanes, and especially if the center and guard can block down when they can run to the bubble. Look for the Niners today, Larry, to go with a lot of check. Checkmate me. When you have that check, that means there's 2 plays. You leave to break the huddle, you got 2 plays. Wherever the guard bubble is, you're running to that bubble side. If not, you look for him to get out of the play and maybe have a pass play. So going to have some check with me's at the line. Look for the young quarterback today. Guaranteed we'll have some checks. He's going to read the front, and you're going to see him run to the bubble.
Danny Gray's probably going to be activated. He was not up in week 1. Denver did whatever they wanted on Monday Night Football against this young secondary. This secondary has Kobe Bryant, who won the Thorpe Award last year at Cincinnati, and then Tariq Woolen. And Woolen, I would imagine, Woolen and Jackson are going to be matched up mostly with Ayuk. Ayuk was outside like 80% of the snaps last week. If we see that again, that means Ayuk on Woolen or Jackson. I think that's advantage 49ers. I think if there's one thing I'd love to see in this game, I'd love to see them go after, first of all, take some shots with Danny Gray down the field, loosen this team up. Denver showed the recipe last week. You can make big plays on this Seahawks defense. You got to take some shots down the field with Danny Gray, but I think you got to try to get the ball to Ayuk. He had 3 touches last week, and if you looked at what Cortland Sutton did and what Jerry Jeudy did to this secondary, I think Ayuk and Debo could. I know the skies could open. There could be some precipitation. We don't know how wet the field will be. I think there's, the one thing I love about Trey, he throws the deep ball really well, and I'd like to see them challenge Seattle down the field through the air today.
Well, you like it, you love it, and you want some more of it. And I can tell you right now, sure as Monday come after Sunday, you know what I'm saying? And they're going to throw the ball, and they're going to throw some deep balls today. There will be opportunities for guys to make plays in the passing game. I would say right now, if you told me give me over 4, I would say yes, the Niners will have more 4 chunk plays. That means 20 yards or more. Yes, they're going to throw the ball deep. They're going to let it go, and you're going to see some windows also again this 3-4. Yes, it's 3-4. It's in the secondary, you got to drop in. You can play more coverages because you got more guys dropping, but there are some huge windows and opportunities, and Trey should have a little bit more time because now you're only bringing 3 guys, so you get some double teams in the interior line. So now Trey can hold on to the ball, and he's going to have some opportunities to go downfield with the ball. And if not, if you can run the ball too, he's going to continue to play action. I think that you're going to see a big day out of this Niners offense because of the defense they're playing against, but also because now you can talking about the speed. We were disappointed last week saying, my God, you don't have the speedster up. This week, the elements are great. The weather looks a little, it may rain, may not, but it should have no bearing. This is not Chicago and Soldier Field with the downpour. You're going to have opportunities to take some big shots and also have some huge windows where you're talking about with Debo and Ayuk. No question, it will be there today, Larry. It will be there. The plays and the opportunities for big plays, Seattle gives you that.
The Niners ran at 55% of the time in week 1. Who do you think's their leading rusher today?
Wow.
I mean, because I'll tell you, the disappointing thing, Niners ran for 176. Only 63 of those yards came from the running backs. It was Debo and Lance. So who's the leading rusher today?
Debo.
You think so? Again?
I think Debo's the leading rusher because
I'd like to see TDP.
I would love to see the running backs do what they need to do to run the ball, but I just think Debo's your big play guy in the running game. Now, if those guys can be amicable and you say, look, those guys are running back by committee, excluding Debo, if they can give you 100 yards, that's fine by committee, because if they give you over 100 and then Trey gets you 25, that's already, 130, 140 right there. Debo's going to get you 60, 70 yards. He's that type of a player, whether it's the jet sweep, whether it's a quick little bubble screen, get the ball to him and get the ball to him early, because now you're going to change the defense. Defense got to play tighter on him when you're doing that. Now you're talking about that deep ball that you're looking to get, Larry. Now, because now you have the defense saying, we got to play tight, keep him in the phone booth, and they're going to force Trey to beat him. And I'm going to tell you right now, Trey Lance will beat Seattle with his arm today. They're going to force him to death, because they can't just sit back and just say, oh, God. They're going to have to say, look, we got to make him beat you. We cannot let this team be two-dimensional, run and pass. I think Trey's going to have to beat him with his arm today.
It's going to be interesting, because last week we saw the Bears, rush 3, rush 4, drop 7, drop 8, make Trey be accurate. We're going to see if Trey can indeed be accurate throwing the ball, and will they blitz him? Will they blitz him and give him defined reads, or will they, drop those extra guys in the coverage and make him be accurate? I think they're going to try to drop guys into coverage and make Trey prove that he can be an accurate passer. We got a lot to get to. We're going to talk a little bit. We'll flip the card and talk a little bit about what to expect from the 49ers on the defensive side of the ball. I'll say this. There's no Bobby Wagner. There's no Jamal Adams, but they've got the NFC defensive player of the week in week 1, Uchenna Nwosu, who came over from the Chargers, the former SC linebacker, is that outside backer in this 3-4. And man, if there's one guy for the 49ers that, you put on the whiteboard, we got to get this guy blocked, it's Nwosu.
Oh, Nwosu's a hell of a player. The guy can get after it, and that's why he's a 3-4. You let him let him let his athletic ability emerge, and that's what you're going to do. You watch the Steelers in the heyday, they were the team that loved that 3-4, three down linemen with the 4 linebackers, and they were one of the best. You had some guys that could get after it, Joey Porter, all the different dudes that they had, number 92, James Harrison, all the players that the Steelers had in that 3-4, they made the 3-4 what it is. I mean, hell, you remember the great days with the Chargers that we had. We had lights out, Sean Merriman, Sean Phillips, Stephen Foley. We had guys that could get after the quarterback and rush from the 3-4, but we had a guy in the middle by Big Jamal. So when you have
Jamal Williams,
absolutely.
He was a house.
So now the Niners are in a situation where you know that they're going to come after you, but you got to make sure that you're aware of where he's at, keep the back end at chip at time and sometimes, but then you're going to have some opportunities with your tackle. And when he's on that left side, I don't care how good he is, he's going to have the great neutralizer is Williams.
All right, keep it locked right here on 95.7 The Game. Pre-game, post-game. In the post-game today, Alan Stiles and Evan Giddings will take you after the football game. Niners looking for their first win of the year. Coming up next, we're going to hear from Jimmie Ward. We're going to hear from Michael Lombardi, who had some very critical comments of Trey Lance on his podcast this week. And we'll flip the card and talk about what we expect to see from the 49ers on the defensive side of the ball. Brian Peacock, from the host on Locked On Niners, joins us in hour 2. JD will check in right around 12:30. Kickoff slated for 1:05 today. The Niners on a rainy day, perfect football weather. No rain yet, but it looks like rain's in the forecast. We may see more this afternoon. 49ers and Seahawks. Niners looking for that first win. And, of course, you've got the kickoff show with Lowe and myself on 95.7 The Game.
At Harris Ranch, we do beef, just like we've done for over 50 years. Beef that's raised locally right here in California. The flavor you crave, the quality you trust time.
Now back to the Kickoff Show with Larry Krueger and Lorenzo Neal on 95.7 The Game. Sponsored by Jim Beam Bourbon Whiskey. Taste the world's #1 bourbon. And by Harris Ranch Beef. Legendary beef, legendary quality.
Welcome back to the Kickoff Show. Larry Krueger and Lo Neal down here at the Hilton in Santa Clara, getting you ready for Niner football. 49ers and the Seahawks at Levi Stadium. It's week 2 in the NFL. And, of course, Lo Neal, 16-year NFL veteran, one of the best blocking fullbacks the league's ever seen. Let's get to Jimmie Ward. Jimmie Ward was really interesting. Caught up with Jimmie in the locker room this week. Jimmie, of course, I thought would be the perfect guy to talk to. Why? Because he's smart, he's candid, he's one of the leaders on the team, and you know the way it is. Yeah. It's like he didn't play last week. So, in a way, he's got perspective that if he had played, you know what I mean? It's a little different deal. When a guy hasn't played, I know he's watched the film, I know he's a smart football player, right, but it's not so personal. It's not, hey, what didn't you do? It's like, what didn't we do? Right. So let's hear a little bit of Jimmie Ward. I thought he's made a number of really interesting comments, and then we'll comment on it on the tail end. A little Jimmie Ward inside the Niner locker room.
All right, we're in the Niner locker room with one of the veteran Niners, Jimmie Ward. And Jimmie, obviously a tough loss for the team in week 1. You weren't out there, but they missed you, I'm sure. Give me your perspective on it, because I'm sure you have one.
We try to contain the quarterback. The defense did a great job, but eventually, sometimes something happens, and a bust play here or there, and the guy, he's getting paid too. He's really a phenomenal talent, and he ended up making a few plays, and I feel like if we could have limit those big plays, then we could have came off with the win, but we didn't.
The busted plays, the one to Pettis, who is there a coverage blow up there? Was it Greenlaw read the running back underneath? What was the bust on that play?
Just a total breakdown, man. That's what happens, kind of with these scrambling quarterbacks, man, when they can extend the play. And, the zone can only hold up for so long. Man coverage can only hold up for so long. So I just feel like it was just Justin Fields just being him, being Justin Fields.
What can you give the young guys in your room to help, kind of get beyond week 1 and focus on week 2? Because you've been through it before, and, the clock's ticking and there's no real time to dwell on the loss.
Really, just, it's a long season.
Yeah.
Pitch your best foot forward and look ahead and, focus on next week. Each week is going to be a new team with a new scheme.
You're a guy who hit, a lot of people say hits like a linebacker, covers like a corner. What part of your game do you enjoy more? It seems like you love blowing people up, but then you do have that man-to-man coverage ability. What do you think your greatest strength is as a player?
I like both. It just depends on the type of players I'm playing. Some guys I like to do both. Like if I'm playing against a guy like DK or Lockett, I like to cover him, but I also want my coach to call a play where I can just blow them up to let them know my presence here, and then they'll be scared to catch the ball if they know somebody right there is about to hit them in their rib cage or their patella. You know, a lot of guys don't get up too fast if you hit them in the right spot of the knee or you hit them in their rib cage. That's just my mentality. But I love the cover too.
Hey, Jimmie. How do you feel to get recognized on the top 100 players list? I mean, I saw, Sherm's been preaching on Twitter, and I guess through his new podcast, he's always talking you up. He's like, man, that guy's going to be all pro this year. So how'd that feel, and does that add any extra confidence going into this year?
It's cool. I really did the same thing. I just got more turnovers. Oh, shout out to Sherm, man. I appreciate it. Sherm, that's my guy, though. But, it was cool to actually make it on the top 100. I didn't think they was going to pit me on it. That's why I be coming out each year trying to kill somebody. Just because I'm like, okay, I play against y'all. Y'all didn't vote me in? Okay. We'll see about it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever day that is. If my coach dial it up and I get an opportunity, I'm going to make you feel it just for not voting for me. And I'm going to do that again just for being 96. So you tell me there's that many other safeties better than me that can cover better than me and hit better than me. So we'll see this year when I get back on the field.
It's Seattle week. Give us something on DK or on Lockett. They're different receivers, but they're dangerous receivers.
Lockett, fast. He's going to do more posts, more corner posts. They like him with the double moves. DK, he's stiff, so it's just going to be 9 balls, comeback, slants. He's a big body. They don't want Lockett. They don't want him coming in the middle, nowhere, trying to catch balls because he doesn't weigh as much as DK. So that's kind of how they're going to use both of those wide receivers. Like I said, DK, he can take more of a hit. He can take more hits because he's a bigger body. And Lockett can't take so many hits. So they're going to keep him on the outside and make him run double moves and corner posts and stuff like that.
What do you think of the tight ends? Parkinson's 6'7", Disley's a veteran. They used both of them this last week.
They're going to run trick plays with them, like versus my safeties. I don't feel like they get open in the man coverage. So if they catch the ball, it's going to be in zone. Like I don't see them catching too many balls with the safeties, how we cover here.
Mooney and Womack added to the secondary. Obviously, to me, that was my takeaway from week one, is just how scary the Niners secondary potentially can be. What do you think of the new additions?
Oh, I love him. Sammy is a ball hawk. Mooney, you seen what he just did. Like Justin Fields, I feel like the head coach just told Justin Fields just to throw the ball up to see what happens. And he threw the ball up twice on Mooney's side, and the ball wasn't catchable for neither side. So you see what he brings to the table. He's a big body, and he can tackle too. So that's a great addition to the team.
I know turnovers are a bit of luck, but was that an emphasis at all this year? Like, get some more picks. Seems like in the Shanahan era, haven't been as many interceptions and turnover ratios. A little low.
We switched some calls up. We're gonna be
nice.
We switched some calls up. We're gonna be able to see the ball more on the back end. It's like it's hard to catch. It's hard to catch picks in man coverage.
Yeah,
like we be fighting for our life. So. It's hard, but zone coverage, we can see the ball. Like when we switching it up and some of the calls that he has, like you see how Huff caught a pick early in the game. I just feel like that's only a taste of what we gonna do this season. I feel like we're gonna get our hands on a lot of ball, and that's and linebackers including. And you never know, you probably see some D linemen get some picks.
I gotta ask you about Huff. I mean, you've been with this team for a while. He's impressive, man. He is impressive. And to me, what's impressive is how he diagnoses so early the mesh point on the handoffs, the run plays, and he aggressively attacks. Give me your thoughts on his progress. Seems like every time I watch him, he's better.
That's an instinct, bro. He has something that you can't teach. And it's him watching a bunch of film that makes him even more faster. And then he's understanding what he's going to get. He understands if this guy blocks engaged on the D end, if it's a double team, he can play fast. And that's what he's been doing. Like this first game, or even in preseason, he's been playing fast. He hasn't been hesitating. No hesitation in his game. And that's normally who wins, the guy who doesn't hesitate in his game.
And it's all film study? It's all based on film study, huh?
It's all based on film study. It's the coaches coaching them up pretty good. Coach CU and Coach DB, they coaching them up pretty good. And it's Huff being Huff. Huff is a tremendous talent.
Does he have the best hair on the team?
Yeah, definitely. Y'all need to go tell somebody to give him a shampoo deal or something soon.
Jimmie, thanks, man.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jimmie Ward inside the locker room. He's so good, man.
Good.
He is so good.
God.
He said so many things there that we could spend the next half hour breaking down. But what jumped out to you?
I think the biggest thing that came over to me, what I kind of resonated with was turnovers. And he laid it out the reason why. Everyone talks about the Niners' lack of turnovers and need to emphasize more turnovers. And what he was alluding to is like, people understand, yes, when you're a good man-to-man team, you like to play man-to-man because you sacrifice interceptions for man-to-man, but you usually get a lot more sacks because you have a team that can pressure. You play man-to-man because usually your defensive front is going to get after the quarterback, so the quarterback can't hold the ball. So you play man-to-man, and then bam, you hit the quarterback. So
you play man-to-man if you match up. Also, if you don't match up, you play zone. Right?
Exactly. And so, but when he's talking about the turnover, though, the reason why he's talking about, because now if you play more zone coverages, now you can see the ball because you're on the back end, and if the pressure gets there, now guys can attack the ball because they see it in flight. Especially when you have some zone and looks like you see the linebackers dropping underneath stuff and getting the picks because the quarterback think there's a window that's there, and it's not. He's just getting to a spot, so he doesn't read the linebacker and anticipates where he's going, and that's where he's talking about even the linebackers. So I think that what he was alluding to today is like, hey, you're going to see more turnovers and more interceptions because we're going to mix it up more. Yeah. Not that they couldn't play zone and but now you're going to play more, so he's going to create more turnovers. So that was something I was like, wow. It was fascinating to hear.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting to hear him talk about Huff, how, he plays fast, how there's no hesitation. He said, he who hesitates basically loses, and there's no hesitation. A lot from film study, but, man, the Niners played a lot of cover 3, and they had Huff hugged up on the line of scrimmage, and his instinct and his lack of hesitation, he keys it, he diagnoses it, and he attacks the mesh point. And he had 11 tackles and a pick last week. He looked like a Pro Bowler.
He didn't look like he played like a Pro Bowler.
He did.
Without a doubt, if you talk about which one safety, if you look 11 tackles, a pick, he probably was the best safety darn near in the league last week for week 1. If you look at just his pure numbers. And what he's saying, and I tell my nephew, he's at Fresno City, and he plays linebacker. And I said, and he's an athlete. And I'm like, the reason why you're not making the plays that you want to make is because you don't know what you're doing and you're hesitating just a second, and now guys can cover. You see what Huff, and that's what he was talking about. Because he knows by alignment and assignment, because of the film study, guys aren't able to get on him because he's already playing on that side of the ball. See, if he's a safety and he's waiting and if he's in the box and he's gathering his feet and he's waiting, saying, okay, where's the play? And then he reacts. Now guys can ace block, get on block, and now they push. A lot of offense is about guys blocking and double teams and then coming off to go block the other guy. And so because he's not hesitant, if they're ace blocking or trade blocking, when they got 2-on-1 and when they're getting ready to come off, he's already in the backfield because he already knows the concept of the offense. He knows that there's a double team right here, and he's saying, okay, I see the double team, guard goes down, I go. Guys don't understand that. The linebacker safety, when you're playing in the box, your guard is going to tell you where to go. Anytime the guard goes down, you're saying you have to shoot and fire your gun because you know something's coming. And a lot of guys, Larry, don't react off of that. Watch today when you see that guard down, linebacker, you go. Because you know that if you don't go and you hesitate, it's a quick down block, and all of a sudden he's coming off on you. And you create holes and opportunities for the run game. So that's what he's doing. Huff, and that's what he was alluding to. How he analyzes the game, it's because of alignment, and it's his film study. Love this young man. This guy can play football.
The other thing that I caught you smiling at was when Jimmy starts talking about, I want to kill somebody, or I like to hit, you hit them in their rib cage or their patella. They don't move so fast.
Love that.
Jimmy's got a defensive mentality. When he said that, he's looking at me. I can catch a little grin coming off the side of his mouth. He had a little grin when he said that. I mean, you can't play defense in this league unless you like to hit people.
No question. I'm gonna tell you, man. Now you set him up through those. It's great, Larry, because you know who he is as a player. Watching him, you might not know him as a person, but you know him as a player. You've been around this game long enough that you see the way he plays, and you say, I'm going to ask this question because you already know who he is. And that was great by you. You're like, what do you think? And he's just talking about, no, he ain't coming across the middle because he ain't built for that. They don't want to see me because they know I'm going for that patella. They know I'm going for that spleen. They know that I'm going out there. I'm going to do body. It's football. It's a
I'm telling
contact
you.
sport. And you just...
It ain't for the meek,
no,
baby.
It's not.
It ain't. Let's hear a little bit. The other audio I thought, that audio I just had to bring to you. The other audio this week that I thought was phenomenal, Michael Lombardi. Now, everybody had an opinion on Trey, and there were a bunch of different ones, but this one I thought was really interesting. I want you to hear what Michael Lombardi, former personnel exec with the Browns and Raiders and probably a couple other teams, Patriots, 49ers, what he said on a podcast this week about Trey Lance, and then I want to debate this a little bit. Here's Michael Lombardi on the Michael Lombardi podcast earlier this week.
You know, you can deflect this and say this was on penalties, but this game shouldn't have been close. I mean, the Niners were by far the better team on tape. They were by far, but they couldn't do anything.
There's going to be growing pains, and at times it's going to look horrific, but he's got to be out there.
I mean, why? Why you got to put him out there? I mean, you went to the Super Bowl with the other guy. I mean, Kyle's 38-43 as a head coach in the regular season. 31 of those wins came with Jimmy Garoppolo. So he's 7-29 as a head coach when he doesn't play Garoppolo. Like, you're going to lose the confidence of the team. We can all masquerade this, but the defense is playing a doubleheader out there, you know, and you're running the ball. They must have run more jet sweeps than ever, right? Yes. I mean, they're running jet sweeps. I mean, they ran the ball effectively.
You can tell that he was not comfortable at any point during that game there. But I just think that they made the bet on Trey Lance in April of 2021. So by hook or crook, this is the situation that they've put themselves in.
There's a thing called sunk cost fallacy, you know, and what you're playing into that. Since we did it, we got to keep going. But at some point, I would say Kyle's going to blame it on the penalties. Okay, that gets you through week one. You lose another game? Let me tell you something. You put Lance is on tape now. These defensive coordinators are too freaking smart. They see the same thing I see. Hey, he's throwing to the guy he reads. When they got behind 19-13 and it became a pass game, watch that tape from that point forward. Watch that game. That's when you have to evaluate the quarterback. When it became, I got to throw it, can I throw it? And he couldn't. How about the people that bet Trey Lance for MVP? Like, seriously, can I send you St. Jude's number, please? They call me. St. Jude's calls me at least once a week, you know, for a donation. Can I send you those people that number? And can I send the people that were recommending that? Can I send them some? You know, like, seriously, where did you come up with that idea? As you said, this guy hasn't played enough, and now you think he's going to go from not playing to the MVP of the National Football League? You got no respect for the NFL when you make that statement.
Really interesting comments there from Michael Lombardi, I thought. I mean, the part that I wanted to get your thoughts on, we didn't get it in there, but one of the things is, like, he basically went on to say, is Kyle going to lose the locker room if he stays with Trey? One, I mean, this incredible impatience is just off the charts. I mean, you're incredibly patient with Jimmy G as he makes mistake after mistake after mistake and repeats the same mistakes, but you're going to go 3 starts with Trey Lance, despite the fact that he's like the most inexperienced first-round quarterback in our lifetime, but he gets 3 starts, so you're throwing him out. But he made an interesting comment. I want your thoughts on this. Our defensive coordinators do you see, when you see Trey Lance, a quarterback that's so crude, that's so raw, that's so young, that what Michael Lombardi said there is going to come to fruition? That defensive coordinators are going to own him, and that they're basically going to turn off his water, and he's going to be flummoxed, confused, and they're going to render him like basically back, useless and headed back to the bench. That's the picture he painted there of hey, the word's gotten out. NFL teams have seen him throw. They've seen him. He's one look and go. He's crude. He's raw. He's this. He's inaccurate. What do you think, Glo?
You know what? I respect Michael Lombardi. This guy's seen a lot of football. Families, seen a lot of football. Isn't one of his family members with the Chargers, right? Is the offensive coordinator.
I believe so.
One of Lombardi's offensive coordinator. But you don't hear him say the same. Is because it's like it's easy to jump on after the fact. We look at Herbert and we say Herbert's a good quarterback. Now, do you think he should have threw that pass that cost the Chargers the game? The pick 6 against Kansas City Thursday night that went 90 yards.
Not only that, I think Herbert's like 4-8 in his last 12 starts. So the Chargers are 4-8 in his last 12 starts, something like that.
Exactly. But everyone's deeming him the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right.
I think the kid can play, but you had a Lombardi make the call to throw it on 1st and goal on the 3-yard line, and to give the ball back to Mahomes, but instead you went 100-yard interception instead of maybe running it, killing the clock, doing something. So I'm saying that to say that people are human and they make mistakes, and certain people get a certain pass and individuals get passes and individuals don't. And that's the world we live in. It's why I think that he's right about, hey, Trey needs to get better. Absolutely. I just don't know. For me, it's like simple. Okay, if you guys think Jimmie, then go with Jimmie and let him play. And it's a different team. It's a different game. And I don't think with the line that they have, I don't think that against that last week, I don't think that Jimmie's winning. I don't think Trey lost that game for them. Jimmie doesn't throw the ball long. Everyone says that. I think he can, but is it great? Probably not. So when they're just saying, okay, sign it off, I can't do that yet. I think that what he said, if what he's just saying is all dark and gloom, it's almost best that if for me, if I'm looking at this as outside looking in, it's like, go with Jimmie the whole year if you think that's going to get you. Because I'm telling you,
what would you do here? Because they're trying to do two things at once. They're trying to win the Super Bowl and develop Trey Lance. How long do you go with Trey Lance? Is it about wins and losses? Are you willing to I don't want to say tank, because that's a terrible word, but are you willing to sacrifice this year's run at the Super Bowl to develop Trey Lance? What's more vital going forward? How would you feel about it as a veteran in that room? Is Kyle going to be pressured by the dozen veterans to say, hey, look, we got to Trent Williams is 34 years old. He might only play 2 more years. He doesn't have 2 years to wait around on Trey. Or, I mean, how do you view it? Is Shanahan going to be forced to jump off Trey if the losses mount?
Shanahan has got to put earplugs in and don't listen to you guys. Don't listen to anybody. Not me, not anyone. Because bottom line is this, Larry. You say, oh, is this a window you're jeopardizing? Well, play Jimmie. And you had that same window last year. You had that same window for the last 4 years, and where to get you. Everyone says, it got you to a championship. It got you to the NFC championship. Got you there. True. But what happened at that moment when you needed him to do something? When you needed that particular pass overthrown? Man, what do you need when at that moment last year, fumbled the ball against the Rams, interception, end of the game, didn't get... So
it wasn't good. The bottom line is it wasn't good enough.
So my point is, so when everyone's
in the eyes of Kyle Shanahan, not in our eyes.
Yeah, but so everyone's like, okay, well, Jimmie, okay, so go back to it. If that's what the fans want, that's where Kyle Shanahan can't get caught up in it, because we're in a media-driven world in everything, from politics, the narrative, everything, sports. People believe because they have a microphone and they can yell and they think they know football that they're going to demand at them and to change, to alter, whatever. And that's where we live in. I don't care. This is Kyle Shanahan's call. It's his duck. He'll make it quack. But it should not be predicated on what these talking heads are saying, because if he's shown you that Jimmie can't do it, he's given Jimmie an opportunity, many opportunities to get to where he wanted him to go. And it hasn't happened. You can blame Jimmie. You cannot blame Jimmie. I don't think everything's Jimmie's fault. But either way, right now, he can't win. If they don't win a Super Bowl, if they go to the Super Bowl, people will say they should have went with Jimmie. If they don't go to the Super Bowl, they should have had Jimmie. And if you go with Jimmie and Jimmie struggles and Jimmie doesn't get the protection that he needs and things break down and the Niners offensive line's not as good as we think, and all of a sudden he's getting hit, throwing interceptions, and the team's not winning, what do they do now? Go back to the run. So you can't win. This situation that's set up, it's impossible to win.
Yeah, that's a great point. Look at last year. They went with Jimmie. People called for Trey most of the year. Now they're going with Trey, and they lose week 1, and suddenly it's like, if he loses this week, he's out. The word that we're going to find out the answer to as far as is conviction. What kind of conviction does Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have in their decision to draft Trey Lance? If they're totally convicted in it and they still believe wholeheartedly in him, they're going to stick with him. If for some reason, for whatever reason, and it doesn't have to make sense to us, but if they have more information about the player than we do, if they lack conviction in this player and they jump off of him, that will be telling as well. All right, let's take a timeout. We're an hour in the books. We got an hour to go. We'll take a timeout right now. The inactive list is out. We'll tell you who's on it coming up next. Brian Peacock's going to join us, the host of Locked On 49ers. Bottom of the hour, JD checks in, and we'll talk about some of the late-breaking news and notes around this thing. And we'll also look at some scores from the morning games around the NFL. There are 5 games going on in the afternoon. It's a Monday night doubleheader this week. We've already seen the Chiefs beat the Chargers to kick things off Thursday night, and there are 7 10 a.m. games going on that we will update you on as we go. It's the Kickoff Show. Lo Neal, Larry Krueger with you on 95.7 The Game.
I wanted to know why some people who get COVID-19 get it so bad. I found out it may be because they have a high risk factor, such as heart disease.
Now back to the Kickoff Show with Larry Krueger and Lorenzo Neal on 95.7 The Game. Sponsored by Jim Beam Bourbon Whiskey. Taste the world's #1 bourbon. And by Harris Ranch Beef. Legendary beef, legendary quality.
And welcome back to the Kickoff Show. Larry Krueger, Lo Neal here at the Hilton in Santa Clara, across the street from Levi's Stadium. It's week 2 in the NFL, and the 49ers host the Seattle Seahawks today. And, of course, you're listening to 95.7 The Game and the Kickoff Show, brought to you by Jim Beam and Harris Ranch Beef. And, by the way, the lovely young lady from Harris Ranch Beef just dropped a beautiful golf shirt. Lo just dropped it on. Look at that. Look at that. You got the hat and the shirt. Both these are really, really sharp. Harris Ranch, anybody, if you're driving through Coalinga, you got to stop
What
at
you know
Harris
about
Ranch.
Harris Ranch? You know nothing about Harris
You're
Ranch.
kidding me? It's my tried and true, man. I stop there every time.
Don't start talking about driving through Coalinga. It's like, look, if you're taking the I-5, get off on the 198 and go east, right off the exit, 1 mile from I-5, get you there. And you'd say, Lo Neal, you tell him the big fella from Lee Moore said, come over to Harris Ranch, get some of that good beef.
There you go, Harris Ranch, and it is phenomenal. Great place to stop for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Check out Harris Ranch, and, of course, Jim Beam. Who doesn't love a little Jim Beam?
Little Jimmy Beam.
49ers and Seahawks today, and joining us is Brian Peacock, the host of Locked On 49ers, and you can check him out on the Locked On Network, and he's with us to break it all down. Brian, thanks for a few minutes. Why don't we get right into it? What did you think of Lance in week 1, and what do you expect to see today against the Seahawks defense?
Yeah, and by the way, guys, speak my language with 198. If I sell you, kid, rolling through to
there you go.
Ranch on the way to Pismo Beach. So, yeah, I'm all about that.
My guy.
Yeah, Trey Lance. Trey Lance in week 1, it's really hard to evaluate just because of the conditions. And obviously the conditions, the wind's blowing in, so some rain right now as we speak in Santa Clara. So we'll see what the conditions are like. Probably not as wet as they were last week, but man, in the fourth quarter, you just got to throw that out when the monsoon was really coming down. And before things got too bad, I thought he made some great throws. The dime he threw to Ray McLeod between 3 defenders, I thought he was making quicker decisions than he did last year. And as you know, this is a process, so we'll see how he continues to grow. But I think when you look at the stat line, I know they had the L, but I think overall Trey Lance looked better than maybe all that looks when you put it together.
Oh, my God. You're speaking my language. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I thought when you looked at that game, the weather played so much of a factor. Both teams had to play it. But like you said, in the fourth quarter, the monsoon coming down, you can't take that and say that was Trey Lance. I totally agree with you. Are the 49ers, because it nullified the rush. They couldn't do things that they usually do. Let's just talk about this game. Even though the weather's a little shaky, it's not going to be near what we saw last week. What are you looking for Trey in particular, but just from the 49ers as a whole?
Yeah, and I think there's going to be some normalization with this team versus what we saw last week, and maybe not the weather normalizing as much as we thought this week in week 2, but just the penalties and guys like Trent Williams, who you never have to worry about. He got beat more times than I think you would expect in week number 1. The 49ers defensive line, which was dominating the first half, Justin Fields and the Bears offense was non-operational in the first half of the game, and they looked a little bit gassed out there. And, maybe a little bit of an extended preseason game for guys like Trent Williams and Nick Bosa and some of the 49ers veterans that didn't play a lot in the preseason. So I think some of those things you're just going to see. And look, the NFL is chaos at times, and it's such a small sample league. I don't think you can take too much from a week 1 going into week 2 in a game like we saw with the conditions. So normalization is the big thing for me. The veterans playing like veterans, that defensive line continuing to dominate. And look, the Seahawks are rolling out there with 2 rookie offensive tackles. The big thing to me in this game is the 49ers have to have some welcome to the NFL moments against some of those young players on the Seahawks, because the Seahawks had a pretty good draft class, I think, but Charles Cross at left tackle, Abe Lucas at right tackle. You've got a rookie corner in Tariq Woolen starting on one side. You've got another rookie who's the number 3 corner in Kobe Bryant. I mean, you have to give these guys welcome to the NFL moments this week. So I think that's really huge. And, the Geno Smith played well, and the confidence he displayed in Week 1 against the Broncos. But let's be honest, that there's a pretty big drop-off from Russell Wilson. So I think the Seahawks might come back down to earth from what we saw in Week 1, too.
You know, one of the things that I'm expecting to see in this game is that I think the Seahawks are going to try the middle of the defense against the 49ers. I mean, 11 of Seattle's 18 runs against Denver came up the middle. And now you don't have DJ Jones and you have Kinlaw. If there was one thing that was kind of disturbing from the Bears game that seemed like it might be a recurring type theme is Khalil Herbert ran the ball untouched in a key sequence in the second half for a touchdown that took it from a one-score game to a two-score game. I think the Niners missed DJ Jones against the run, and I think get ready for Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker III today in huge doses.
Right, and we haven't seen Ken Walker yet in the NFL, but he's a really talented back, might even be a better pure runner than Rashad Penny is. And so if he is healthy and he's in the game for the Seahawks, that's a nice little 1-2 punch they have. And you're right, being 6'6", those defensive tackles for the 49ers, very different from a leverage perspective than what they had with DJ Jones and traditionally what you see in the NFL with the nose tackle. And I don't know if Kinlaw's a monster. He wins in bursts and he shows these flashes, but I think he still needs to work on consistency, and you'll see him make a big play, and then on the next drive you'll see him sort of get stood up and not really have that leverage and get walled off as an interior run defender. So I think that's big. And then you go further down the middle in the back end, and Hufanga was so good. He was everywhere last week coming up to make plays, but those two coverage busts, he was the safety on the side where they scored touchdowns on both of those plays. So they've got to shore up some things up the middle for sure, Larry. That's a great call.
No question. I think they will, and hopefully they do. But when you look at the other side of the ball and you talk about the 49ers, we understand what this team can do in the last couple of years running the ball. How are they? Where do you see them running the ball? How effective can they be, and how effective do they need to be?
They've got to be effective, especially if the weather is going to be wet. And you would have thought they would have been able to continue the success they had last week. And it can't be just Deebo Samuel as your only offensive weapon out there. You've got to be able to make holes for your running backs, whether it's Jeff Wilson, who's going to get first crack, and really, I talked about the rookies on the Seahawks side. How about the 49ers rookie running backs? A really big opportunity now for Ty Davis-Price. Does he leapfrog Jordan Mason as the second running back, because he was held out last week inactive just as the third or fourth running back on the roster, and Jordan Mason plays more special teams. So Ty Davis-Price was inactive, but I really think he'll get second crack here after Jeff Wilson, just judging by the fact that Jordan Mason never saw the ball last week, even after Elijah Mitchell went out. So I wonder if one of those rookie running backs has an opportunity to really sort of show why, especially Ty Davis-Price, why he was drafted in the third round, make some big plays. And maybe, if Kyle Shanahan goes with a hot hand approach, maybe this year's version of Elijah Mitchell could be Ty Davis-Price, even though we didn't even see him on the field in week 1.
Yeah, I really like Ty Davis-Price. Let's talk about Geno Smith, 23 of 28 last week, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. He comes into this game in full rhythm. He played this way in the preseason. He's played effectively. He's got 2 rookie offensive tackles, and they allowed 7 combined pressures, but they, for the most part, held up. How does DeMeco Ryans attack Geno? I mean, I looked at his numbers against the blitz. He was 8 of 9 against the blitz. So do you just rush 4 and play coverage behind? What can they do to defend against Geno? Because he's in rhythm.
Yeah, and I think without Jimmie Ward back there, I think that's the way the 49ers would prefer to do it, to be able to get pressure. And again, it comes back to those rookie tackles. The 49ers should be able to get pressure against Geno Smith, and he came out hot. He came out confident, and he's, people laugh. They're like, oh, the Seahawks are going to be terrible because they got Geno Smith. Well, Geno Smith's not, he's a professional quarterback. Maybe he's a high-end backup and not a high-end starter, but he's at least a professional quarterback. He's been in the system, and I don't think they, ideally the Seahawks aren't trying to run a game plan where they need Geno Smith to go out and win the game. And I think it's the same for the 49ers, where they're not trying to have their young first-year starter go out and win football games. But that's why the demise was a little exaggerated for the Seahawks, just because a Pete Carroll coach team is going to win in a lot of small ways. They're going to keep a lot of games close, and as long as Geno Smith isn't a disaster at quarterback, they're going to be in it more often than I think people gave them credit for to start the season. But to me, it's all about up front. The 49ers regime, since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch showed up, is all about their defensive line. Their defensive line has to win often, and really wreck Geno Smith's day that way.
No question. If the Niners are to win, you look at the line at maybe 8 or 9, Niners minus 9 or 8, whatever it may be. What is going to be key for the Niners to make this come in fruition? Is this game as close as you think, or is it going to be a one-sided game? How do you see this game overall?
Yeah, and I think you can throw out records a little bit too when it comes to these two teams. And yeah, the 8.5, 9 points, it just seems like a little bit much, and maybe those lines couldn't correct after 1 week because of how they started in the preseason, because people didn't expect the Seahawks to be very good. I do have the 49ers win this game, but I think it's likely going to be a one-score game, so I would stay away from betting that number on the 49ers winning by that many.
Okay.
It's a blowout. I think it would go the 49ers' way, but I do think the 49ers are going to come out with a victory here in a one-score game against the Seahawks.
Everybody loves D'Amico, and he talked this week about his defense. He said, we need to finish. And I felt like almost interrupting him and saying, D'Amico, you don't need to finish. You need to have guys play smart and play with some poise and play under control. You got all kinds of athletes on defense who can finish with the best of them in this league. You got to play smart. How much of last week's mental breakdowns from Greenlaw and Al-Shaair do you hold at D'Amico's feet?
I think you have to. That was one of the big talking points for me after the game last week. That was a coaching win for young, Matt Eberflus, his first game as an NFL head coach, and that I think that was the difference. Is they were better coached, and you have to go to the coaching staff. You have to go to Kyle. You have to go to D'Amico Ryans, and on down the line of. And I'm sure that was. I'm sure there was nothing they preached more this week than that. Be smart. Don't allow the teams to extend these drives when you've got them off the field on third down. Don't be over aggressive on your assignments. He talked about Hufanga, maybe King a little bit too quick on Justin Fields getting out of the pocket there. So you've got to be smart, and I think that starts with coaching. And I have no doubt that was preached all week in practice, and I expect the 49ers to be a lot better in that regard today.
Not just take the elephant off the table, because we know he's pretty big, and that's the quarterback. Let's not talk about Trey. What else do you want to see from the Niners? If the Niners are going to win today, give me some keys in your point. Besides the quarterback, we understand how important that position is, but what else is going to take place for this Niners to get this victory?
Yeah, it's up front. It's up front in the offensive line for me, and it's just the positions that will help make things easier for Trey Lance. So you've got to protect, especially up the middle with the changeover they've had from guard to guard this year. You've got to protect. You've got to create holes in the running game. No Elijah Mitchell. They haven't proven they can run the ball yet with anybody other than Deebo Samuel and Elijah Mitchell. So that all starts up front to me. Keep your quarterback clean so he can make some reads and make some plays, and you've got to be ahead of the sticks so you're not allowing the defense to come after you on third and longs all day long. I think it's huge, and it's all about up front. And I would like to see some more plays down the field. And I know, windy and rainy, it might not be that type of game, but only 2 targets last week for Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel has been, even since the preseason, more of a factor getting the ball handed off to him than making plays down the field. So I want to see Trey Lance start to develop with some of his receivers as well. And obviously, with George Kittle out, you've got to be able to get the ball to the guys outside that can make some plays.
Yeah, no question about it. I think Ayuk is a major key. The Seattle secondary, I think, is a little overrated. They played 80% zone in week 1. Judy went off. He had over 100 yards and a touchdown. Cortland Sutton had 4 catches for 72 yards. There was big plays left and right. You look at Ayuk, he only had 3 targets. 87% of his routes, though, were on the perimeter. So he's getting Tariq Woolen, who's 6'4" and runs like sub 4.3, and Mike Jackson. To me, Ayuk is a guy, he would be the key guy for me. I want to see Ayuk involved early. They got Deebo involved, and I'd love to see them take some shots to Danny Gray. I think we've looked at the vertical threat in past years, because Jimmy didn't throw that pass well, as just, hey, let's take some shots to loosen up the defense. I actually think this year, Danny Gray is the kind of receiver, he can get deep at will. Trey throws that ball beautifully. I think they're going to connect. And I realize it's bad weather today, so you would think more of a run-heavy game plan, but I would like to see at least 2 shots a half down the field to Danny Gray. If they take 2 shots a half, I think there's a very good chance they connect on one of those for 6.
I agree, Larry. And looking at that Broncos game against the Seahawks last week, and they hit the deep one of Jerry Jeudy, and they didn't go back to it. They didn't test the run on the outside. The 49ers got to do that this week, even if the weather's not great. And when it comes to Danny Gray, that's one aspect I could really see on this team for the 49ers, having Danny Gray on the outside or maybe bunched up, and even if he's clearing things out for the guys underneath, it just adds a little element that the 49ers need to have on offense. And I love Ray McCloud, and I love Juwan Jennings, but I would love to see more of Debo in the slot with more catch and run, 2-way go opportunities out of the slot with Danny Gray on the outside to open things up, either as a decoy to clear out for the underneath guys or maybe hit one over the top.
Brian, great stuff. We look forward to catching up with you as the season progresses. People can check out Locked On 49ers. You guys do a phenomenal job. How many times a week do you guys broadcast?
We're doing it daily. We go daily on the 49ers, on Locked On 49ers. I also have an NFL show with Matt Williamson. We're covering the entire league daily on the Locked On Podcast Network. So I'm coming at you twice a day, Larry.
Oh, look at you. You're a busy, busy man. I know the feeling. Brian, good stuff. Go Niners. Thanks for the time.
Hey, always a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Brian Peacock, host of Locked On 49ers. I don't even know why I asked that question. I know that. Locked On 49ers goes every single day. All right, bottom of the hour, John Dickinson checks in from inside the stadium. Couple key guys, I think, today. And I want your thoughts on who you think the key guys are. But for me, for Seattle, I think you got to get this outside backer Nwosu blocked. I think he's kind of a wild card factor for me, Lo. And then offensively, Kenneth Walker III is a superstar back, and I think people just need to, I know there's a lot of people who watch the NFL that don't watch college, and they have no idea who Kenneth Walker III is. His name might as well be Johnny Walker. They don't know, Wayne Walker. Kenneth Walker III started at Wake Forest. He was great there. Yeah. He then transferred to Michigan State. He was even greater for the Spartans than he was for the Demon Deacons. This guy's done it in the ACC. He's done it in the Big Ten. He is a home run hitter. And he had a hernia early in the year in camp, and so he's kind of coming back from that. But Rashad Penny's a nice back. Don't get me wrong. I think he might have even led the NFL in rushing like the final month of the year. But Kenneth Walker III is a difference maker.
Yes.
He's a home run hitter. And with the 2 rookie tackles and Geno and the weather, Seattle's going to try to run it. They're going to try to run it up the middle. Wrap against Kenneth Walker III, because if you don't, it could be 6, and this kid's good enough where he could take over the game. So
no question.
I know there's a lot of football fans who don't follow the college game, but Kenneth Walker III, absolutely circle him, highlight him in your program. Watch for him if you're a 49er defender, because he's dangerous.
Yeah, and it's crazy that you said that, because mine's going to be the flip side of that. Exactly what you just said. I'm going to tell you who I'm watching. It's that whole defensive front, because they got to stop Kenneth Walker. You're absolutely right. If the Niners win, if the Niners hold this team to 90 yards or less in rushing, this game is going to be lopsided. I got the Niners covering the spread, doing what they do. That's what you talked about. I'm glad you went with Kenneth Walker, because this guy is, like you said, if he's even, he's leaving. He's a home run hitter. I like what he can do in the run game, but it's going to come down to the Niners front. If the Niners front 4 and that linebacker core and those guys hold the Seattle Seahawks under 90 yards and make Geno Smith beat you, this game is going to be a double-digit win for the Niners if the Niners do one thing: shut down the run. If you shut down the run, if you're the San Francisco 49ers, boys, if you're in that locker room, you might have 95-7 the game on. You told Lolo from the Central Valley, if know this game, you shut down the run, baby, and we're eating good tonight, and we're partying. We're popping bottles.
Run the ball, stop the run, win the game. I mean, it's that simple, but it's never quite that simple.
No.
But in this case, and Seattle's got a monstrous front. They, if you look at this team, Al Woods is, 350?
Big boy.
Poona Ford kind of reminds me, he's like a 2022 version of Jerry Ball. Remember Jerry Ball,
Absolutely.
the old Raider?
Absolutely.
Jerry Ball was as wide as he was tall. And so they've got some big boys. I mean, Shelby Harris is a rusher, but Al Woods and Poona Ford inside, and then Nwosu and Darrell Taylor coming off giving them a 5-man surface up front. And then you got Jordan Brooks and the former Stanford linebacker Cody Barton, inside. And those guys, there's no Bobby Wagner, but those guys have made a lot of plays against the run. So I think it's interesting. It's not the Legion of Boom defense. It's not the defense they had years ago, but it's not a defense that's like just a walk in the park.
Right, and that's what you did. You made some great points when you talk about big four. These guys are big. They're call them space eaters. That's how big they are. They can sit there and they hold the three.
Two gapper,
exactly, and just sit there and you're like, man. So they don't give you any place to run, and that's why the Niners is imperative the day that you establish the run. But how do you make those guys average? How do you make those big boys that you're talking about, the 300-pounders, the big guys in the middle? How do you make them become average? Let me tell you how you do that, Larry. You get on the perimeter. So now with this 3-4, because it's a 3-4 defense, you're going to have create some lanes in there, because them big boys, when you're a big tractor trailer, last I saw those big semis on the road, they can't turn really sharp. They got a wide turn. So you get those guys moving, and you get that offensive line running with them. And now they got to stop and redirect. They're too big. They get off balance, and that's going to be key today. The Niners want to get those guys up front moving, that defensive line, and now you cut the defense, because that's a 3-4. You want to cut the defense, and you get some running lanes. I'm fired up right now. I wish I could go back in time, Larry. Woo! Let's go.
I'll tell you the other thing that might be a major key is ball control. Ball control in this game. Why? Because the 49ers have the depth on defense. Seattle's got, pretty decent starting, 11 on defense. It's when you get into their second unit, you look at their backups on the D-line, at linebacker, in the secondary. They're young players, they're inexperienced players, or they're players that are just not all that highly rated. So to me, if there's one key for the 49ers, it's not just run the ball. It's run the ball, dominate the clock. Now, one thing that was interesting last week against Denver is that Seattle's defense gave up 433 yards. But they held Denver to 16 points.
Right.
How did they do that? It was a stout red zone defense.
Bend but don't break.
Denver had no touchdowns on 4 trips to the red zone. They twice fumbled on the one. And then you look at Seattle, though, it's not a one-year deal. Seattle was 3rd in the NFL in red zone defense last year. So this is a defense that will allow you to move it, from the 30 to the 30. But, man, you get in the red zone against this Seattle defense, and they hunker down, and they really raise their level of play even without Bobby Wagner. So
that's what you want to do.
To me, red zone touchdowns for the Niners are absolutely huge. If they can score touchdowns in the red zone, I think this is going to be a very difficult game for the 49ers to lose.
It will be, and that's why it's key that the Niners get these guys moving. You wear those guys up front, because you got to realize, like we alluded to, they're big, they're space eaters, they're 2 gappers, and this is what they want to do. So if you can make those guys move and make them wear them out up front, now you got to substitute and go to the second and third tier guys, and that's what the Niners need to be saying. Today's got to be a track meet. The Niners got to say, we're going to beat this team with speed. We're going to beat them by stretching the field, and we're going to make them cover the whole field. That's what the Niners do well when they got teams, when you're playing in a good situation. When the Niners playing their best football, they make the defense cover every blade of grass out on the field, and that's what they have to do today. Today's not who's tougher. It's about how do we make Seattle cover every blade of ground? How do we make those big guys move? How do we make them go sideline to sideline and wear them out so we can get to the second backup guys? And then in the fourth quarter, we impose our will, and now they're easier to double team. They're easy to come up and trade block, ace block, and easier to cut the defense off and create more running lanes, backdoor cuts, all those different things. It's going to be predicated on how this Niner team does early in the game, first quarter, second game, but making Seattle cover every blade of grass.
We're going to take a timeout right here. By the way, we told you the inactive list is out. George Kittle, Kamoko Toure, Daniel Brunskill, Brock Purdy, Nick Zakelj. That's your inactive list. The 49ers do not have a good record without George Kittle. We'll talk a little bit about that. JD's going to check in with us next. What we're seeing as we're here at the Hilton looking out is that the rain has been somewhat minimal, but there's a lot more wind than was in the forecast yesterday. How will that wind affect things? How is that wind swirling inside the stadium? JD's over there. We're going to get his thoughts on it next. It's the kickoff show. Larry Krueger, Low Neal, getting you ready for 49er football on 95.7 The Game.
Golfers, tee it up this fall at the Golf Mart for big savings. Save up to $150 off.
with Larry Krueger and Lorenzo Neal on 95.7 The Game. Sponsored by Jim Beam Bourbon Whiskey. Taste the world's #1 bourbon. And by Harris Ranch Beef. Legendary beef, legendary quality.
Welcome back to the Kickoff Show. Larry Krueger, Lo Neal here at the Hilton across from Levi's Stadium. Getting ready for Niners and Seahawks. 49ers looking for their first win of the year. Seahawks started the year 1-0. Niners a big favorite. 49ers, though, are 1-7 against Seattle over the last 4 years. We are brought to you by Jim Beam and Harris Ranch Beef. And the good people from Harris Ranch have been chatting us up during the commercial, bringing us gear. Lowe's got
Where's the beef?
Got the golf shirt on.
Yeah, man, I can go hit him. Go hit him a little bit, Larry.
Man, Harris Ranch is big time.
They are. The meat's incredible. The people that make up Harris Ranch, they're great. Great to the people here and enjoying it, the Central Valley people. So having a great time, and what better barbecue and kick off with Harris Ranch Beef, but with a great football season. Niners are underway, second game of the season. Harris Ranch Beef, barbecuing at your house, getting it all in. But ready for some big-time football game. And to me, I know they say it's early and you got a lot of games, but this is a game you need to win.
Absolutely.
This is a game you got to find a way, no matter what it takes. You got to win this ball game.
Got to get a win. Got to get a win. You know, week one, and we're going to talk to JD right here, but week one, they didn't get a win. There were some good things. There were some bad things. This week, it doesn't matter how it looks. They need the W. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they win high scoring, low scoring, if it's passing, running, defense, special teams. It does not matter. They need a W. And we get over to Levi's Stadium for. Oh, JD will join us in a minute, but to me that's really kind of the rub today.
It is.
Because why do they need the win? Because the reality is that there's going to be greater patience. They need to develop Trey Lance. They're only going to be allowed to develop Trey Lance if they can win some games, because they're trying to win. They're trying to develop him and contend for a Super Bowl. So if they win games, guess what? He's going to get a nice long development curve. If they lose games, the pressure gets ratcheted up, and whether it's his fault or not, people will look to point the finger and make a change at quarterback. If you believe the report out there from Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network, he is not anticipating the 49ers making a change at quarterback, regardless of the outcome today.
No, it's regardless. It's not going to make the change. I think that there's going to be for Jimmy G, for me to have to get back on the field, I think Trey would have to bow out in a way where he's like, my shoulder hurts, my rib hurts, mentally I'm not there, and the coach looks in his eyes and say, hey, young fella, should I bring in the reliever? Should I bring in the closer? And I think that those, when you're asking me, how do I think if Jimmy G plays? To me, that's the only way. Because you started this process, you're in this process. How do you look as a head coach and a GM that for week one or week two or week three, you pull your guy, the guy that you invested in the first round? And here's the thing, by the way, you pulled him this year, but you still had your other quarterback under contract. If Jimmy wasn't better, and if Jimmy they thought had more potential, won't fans and people, the Lombardis and everyone realize, think about this. Just think about the logic of it. You could have easily let Trey be the backup this year, another year, because Jimmy was still under contract. And it doesn't look bad because now he would have had 2 years under his belt as a rook, to see Jimmy G, how he operates. And then you turn the keys over him after this year, next year. If they thought Jimmy gave them that chance, Kyle Shanahan would not jeopardize the team, the organization, to just play this young guy just to be playing him, because you're safe. You got a rookie quarterback. You could have kept him on the bench this year, let him watch Jimmy. Jimmy's contract's up after this year. You let him go, and then you could have turned it over. Doesn't that sound, don't you think Kyle Shanahan is smart enough to understand that, Larry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he understands how each and every one of the possible moves will be interpreted and how his football team will react. The question I would have is, what does Kyle actually think of how far Trey is away? Because he ran him 9 times last week. That's a lot of runs. That's a lot of quarterback runs. Are we seeing that because he doesn't trust him as a passer? Are we seeing that because he thinks that's a strength? That's the one thing that came up this week was, some people arguing, and I'm in that group, that they shouldn't put their quarterback in harm's way as much as they did this week or last week against Chicago. And then I heard Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks saying, you know what, Trey running the ball looks good. They ought to run him more. So, there's two different philosophies. Before we go to JD, what do you think? Would you rather see the Niners use Trey more as a runner because that will open things up for other aspects of their offense? Or, you know what? No, do not give Seattle, 10 hits on your quarterback because you're running him.
I think it's going to dictate how Trey looks and what's working. If Trey Lance is working and it's working well with the run and you say, hey, get down in tough situations, get down, and he understands the concepts and how you run the ball, a lot of these quarterbacks that can, I have no problems with that. Yes, you do have to save him and understand it's a long season, 17-game season. So I'm not opposed of him running the ball, but he's a quarterback, and I want to see him throw the ball. I want to see him move the pocket. I want to see him, look to throw the ball before run.
Yeah, I just think that you don't win when you take on NFL linebackers or NFL defensive players as a quarterback. All right, let's welcome in JD. JD, from where we're sitting here at the Hilton, we're watching palm trees sway back and forth. The wind seems to be a little bit more significant than what it was in the forecast coming into today. How's the wind playing out inside the stadium?
Yeah, it is windy inside, guys, and the sun is peeking through. It was raining about 25 minutes ago, coming down pretty good, but only for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. But looking out on the field as the players clear the field and head back to the locker room, it is pretty windy. I mean, anywhere between 15 to 25 miles an hour. The flags on the goalposts are whipping around. The flags up atop the stadium are whipping around. So I think we're all focused and transfixed on the water and the rain based on what happened in Chicago. But I do think the wind has the potential to play more of a factor in this game.
JD, Low Neal here. What's the mood and the atmosphere like today for the Niners? Take me through what you're looking for, the good, the bad, and ugly.
I think when you look at it, I mean, the Niners are fired up. I think the crowd is fired up. It's a home opener. It's the Seahawks, who are still a rivalry. It's that kind of game. I think the team itself, they look loose. They look ready to go. But there is this little pensive energy, I think, guys, beneath the surface, to where if this team can't perform and win for a second consecutive week in a game that everybody thinks they're supposed to win and should win and will win, that you wonder just where it's going to leave them, as far as maybe Kyle Shanahan looking to make a change at quarterback, or maybe some of the outside noise about that. Even if Kyle Shanahan doesn't necessarily want to do it, does that outside noise start to seep in? But no, I think the view that I get and the feel that I get is there were a lot of correctable mistakes that the 49ers made in the game in Chicago that they feel like they can correct. And if they do, just like last week, where you look at the stat line, 2.5, 3 quarters in, they're dominating. I think the Niners believe that they have a significant talent advantage over the Seahawks. No disrespect to the Seahawks' victory against the Broncos on Monday night, but that they should come out if they play at a certain level and the Seahawks be unable to match it.
How does Shanahan and the offensive coaching staff get Trey in a rhythm? The one thing is clear is that Geno comes into this game in a rhythm. Trey's still trying to establish his rhythm. How do they get him into it?
Yeah, I think it's got to be hitting some short passes. And those have been the plays that he struggled with. I don't think it's running, and that's the one thing I'll say. It did look good at times when they ran him. I heard your guys' conversation before. Like, getting Trey into a rhythm isn't him running the rock 10 to 13 times. You may need to do it because it's good for your offense, but the problem is Trey looked pretty comfortable on the medium, intermediate, deep throws in Chicago before the elements became a big factor and you just weren't going to do it anyway. The problem is some of the shorter stuff he's a little bit more inaccurate on, so I can see where Kyle Shanahan is reluctant to call some of those plays. But to me, it's hit some short ones and feel good about the basic stuff going your way along with the runs. And I think play action is huge. Like, to me, I want to see more of play action, roll out, stop, try and hit a deep ball that way, maybe come back the other way, a la what they did against Houston going back to the January 2nd game when Trey Lance got the start in that one. I know the Bears did a nice job of not letting Trey get to the outside. They took a lot of that stuff away. I'm sure Seattle will do the same. But to me, getting Trey into a rhythm is about passes that he's comfortable hitting more than him toting the rock around 10 to 15 times.
JD, for this team and the fans and the media, us talking heads, what is success for young Trey? If this team were to lose this game, what would Trey have to do where he's not the focal point of the loss?
I mean, if they lose today, he'd have to throw for three touchdowns and 250 to 300 yards and blatantly be the reason that they don't lose. I mean, if they lose this game and he puts up a stat line similar to the one in Chicago, I know there's varying reports about what Kyle Shanahan would do. And look, I don't think Kyle Shanahan wants to make a move even if they do lose this game. But if they lose the game and he's bad, he's going to have to be forced into at least thinking about it, and unless Trey Lance goes out there and from a passing game standpoint isn't part of the reason why the 49ers lose this game. So he's got to play better. I think he was on track and playing at a level, fellas, to where if they had won the game against Chicago, it would have been not perfect, certainly not terrible, but a box check. You could live with it. But at the moment in which you don't win the game, you go back and you look at his line, and it's kind of underwhelming. And he missed the throw to Croft, and that hurt you. That was a part of the reason why you lost the game. He took a sack that took him out of field goal range. A part of the 6 to 14 points that they left on the board early. So I think Kyle Shanahan's going to want to avoid anything that's deemed to be a panic move. But I think it would be twofold today for him to actually make a move. It would have to be lose and Trey play badly. But the one way he avoids it is by going out there and throwing, hitting a deep ball touchdown, running for another one, and the Niners winning, covering, and moving on to Denver.
JD, Kittle, the Niners are 6-9 in the 15 games where Kittle has been inactive, and he's inactive today. Are you surprised? Because he gave it a go Friday at practice, and he was out there. Are you surprised that he's not playing today?
I'm not surprised. Why push it? I mean, we talked about it last week on a field that could be a little bit damp, and a guy with a groin. I would not be doing anything if I'm the Niners, and I get it. He wants to play. He wants to get out there and help Trey. I think Kyle Shanahan wants to get out there and help the team and help Trey Lance, and they know those numbers that you just mentioned as far as this team's inability to win when Kittle isn't out on the field and out on the field and being productive. But to me, the one thing the Niners can't do is chase this win by getting Kittle out there when he's less than 100%. Maybe it becomes a little bit of a soggy track again, not to the extent that it was in Chicago, and he tweaks a groin, and now all of a sudden it's September 18th and we're talking about 4 to 6 weeks, or we're talking about 6 to 8 weeks, and then we're talking about November, and then you're going to have to play more games without him. This football team is good enough and should be good enough, talented enough on both ends to go out and not only win the game last week, which they didn't, but win this game today. To me, caution is the right move, and as far as sitting him out, getting him right, and have him ready to roll for an extended period without risking something that's going to put him on the shelf for 2 months.
JD, looking at this game, tell me what the Niners defense needs to be concerned with, and then flip side, what does the Niners offense need to be concerned with what Seattle can do? Both sides.
Yeah, I mean, defensively for the Niners, it's the two receivers. Now they're going to run the ball, and there's no doubt that DK Metcalf you always worry about, Tyler Lockett you always worry about, but they're going to look to run the ball with Rashad Penny. They're going to look to get Geno a couple of quick reads, Geno Smith. Quick read, if it's not Lockett or Metcalf, dump it off to the running backs. And to me, you got to tackle and you got to heat up Geno. I think Geno, when he's pressured, it's a turnover factory. It's a sack fumble, and you're getting the ball in a short field. It's an interception that you can run back and get some field position. Like, to me, it comes down to stopping the run and making him uncomfortable. Help your corners out going up against, really two of the more talented wide receivers in tandem that teams have in this league. So, and Geno threw it up for grabs a little bit to those guys, especially Metcalf the other night, and made some plays for him. I know his completion percentage was excellent, and he only had 5 incompletions and all of that, but they were getting it done quick. Stop the run, heat up Geno. I think forcing turnovers is the key for the Niners today. Offensively, the Seahawks are going to fly around and be fast and physical. They did look like the quintessential Pete Carroll team to me, that Pete Carroll defense in that game against Denver, where they were hitting, forcing turnovers, getting stout at the goal line, and bend but don't break, whatever. Doesn't care about how many yards they give up if they can get a couple turnovers and keep you out of the end zone. So to me, it stay disciplined to the running game. Get some play action in there and really try to keep the game on schedule. And I think, Larry, you touched on it. Get Trey Lance into a rhythm early.
Well, if you can. To me, also I'd like to see them play some games up front on the defense, because you got 3 new starters, first-year starters for Seattle's offensive line. Make them communicate. I'd like to see lots of stunting, lots of movement up front, lots of games up front with the Niner D linemen. I mean, Lucas, the right tackle, Charles Cross, the left tackle, they're rookies, but they're playing at a really, really high level. But make them communicate. And we'll see if they make some mistakes. I think that would be a major thing for the 49ers on the defensive side. And then on the offensive side, I mean, run the ball. And also, if you can somehow, get Trey a couple of easy completions early so he's feeling good. I think that would be a key as well. JD, we'll let you go. I'm predicting a low-scoring game. I like the under here. I'm going to say the 49ers get a win, but I'm thinking that it's more like 17-10, 17-13. I guess I like Seahawks and the points, but I like the 49ers in a definite underplay. What's your final score?
Yeah, I like the under as well, but I do think the Niners are going to get the cover. I think it's going to be difficult for Seattle to score. I like it to end up 23-10, 23-13 San Francisco. So still an under, but also a cover if you're looking at what I last saw was an 8.5 point number in favor of the 49ers.
JD, good stuff. We'll get Lowe's thoughts right here. We'll let you go. We'll see you over there.
Sounds good.
John Dickinson, and of course, make sure you tune in the post game, because Kyle Madsen will be on the coverage. Alan Stiles and Kyle Madsen will have our 95.7 The Game 49er post game show. All right, before we get out of here, we'd like to thank Tim Jordan, who's been our engineer on site, doing a great job. Of course, our guys back at the station who've done an incredible job as well, Sterling and Chris, and then Katie and
Ellen.
Is it Ellen? Eleanor and
yep.
Katie from Harris Ranch. Thanks to them as well. All right, what do you think, Lo? Give me your final thoughts. What kind of score? We got about 5 minutes left before we call it a show. What kind of game do you think it's going to be? What kind of score?
I think this is going to be a physical game. I think you're going to see 2 teams are going to try to fight for field position and fight to see who's dominant. These 2 teams don't like each other. There's a lot of bad blood, and just the rival continues between the Niners and Seahawks. No matter, even when teams are bad, even when one team's better than the other, it's always a ball game. I look at this game as a game that the Niners are saying, hey, this team's 1-0. No one picked. Everyone had Seattle finishing last in the conference, and all of a sudden, here they are. They're the only undefeated team after week 1.
Yeah.
Look for the Niners to say, look, guys, if we go in here, Cal Shanahan, and I know that the DC and all the teams are saying, keep this team under 90. If we keep this team under 90 yards rushing, see if Geno can beat us in the air. I think the Niners like their chances, and they like them a lot. This is going to be a physical game. The Niners are going to keep this run game. Got to shut down the run, because if you just let Seattle be able to run the ball and stay on the field, this game could become one-sided, because now your defensive line, which is your strength, these guys get wore out, they get tired, and now Seattle starts to wear on them after the second half. So look for the Niners to make an emphasis on shutting down the run and make Geno Smith beat you. These are two teams are going to have basically the two same philosophies of shutting down the run and make the quarterback beat you. So I think both teams' philosophy in this game is similar. I just think the Niners, offensively, defensively, as far as collective amount of talent, I think we both agree on there, Larry. The Niners have more talent, and the Niners know what's at stake. I believe the Niners win this game, and they do cover.
It's an interesting matchup, because you got Geno, who is a journeyman player, but he's played this entire camp, the entire preseason. He looked really good in week 1, and it's undeniable he's in rhythm. So you got to disrupt that rhythm somehow. But if you give him defined looks and you blitz him, he's picking apart the blitz. So you really got to get home with your front four.
Yep.
Ebukam was phenomenal last week. If you looked at the way Ebukam, he led the Niners in week 1. He had 4 pressures. He had a sack. He had 3 quarterback hurries. Ebukam's got to get it dialed up again opposite Bosa. Bosa's Bosa, and we know he's going to fire. But, man, if Ebukam can get it dialed up against Bosa against these rookie tackles, and they can pressure Geno and move him off his spot and disrupt that rhythm. I mean, you've seen quarterbacks when they're in rhythm. You get a quarterback in rhythm, he's dangerous.
No question.
It's like a starting pitcher that gets in rhythm. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, now this guy's hard to beat. They got to disrupt Geno's rhythm from the start.
You're right.
That's one. And the other thing, I think, Kenneth Walker, you got to wrap up against Kenneth Walker. He'll bounce it to the outside. He's explosive. He might be a star back. I mean, people know Rashad Penny. They don't know Kenneth Walker. Wrap up on Kenneth Walker. I think that's absolutely crucial. And then for the 49ers on offense, I think you got to take some shots down the field. You have Danny Gray, and you went and drafted him for a reason. And then you watched him in camp, and, this guy can get deep at will. Right. I mean, he runs 4.33, but he plays faster than that. It's like a sub 4.3 feel. And you got a young secondary, and I really think you got to take some shots. Yeah. I'm saying like multiple shots, 2 or 3 a half to Danny Gray. Don't just take shots as throwaway plays. Take shots looking to throw the bomb and complete the bomb. Yeah. You hit a couple of them, you may blow them out of the water. I don't think the Seattle team can score in the 20s, but if this game is like last week's game and it's a low-scoring game in the second half, it's anybody's ball game.
I agree. And I think one of the things, Larry, that we got to take into consideration, I don't think we've talked about it enough and not hinted about it enough, is last week, if you have to realize, if Chicago Bears, if that game last week is played here at Levi Stadium, are we having that conversation? Are we really having this conversation today if that game, it's in Chicago, and yeah, you still should have won in spite that, but if you look at the weather last week and you talk about the Niner faithful and they were playing here in Chicago, Chicago doesn't win that game. They were absolutely, their offense was stifled the first half. The field conditions it nullified the rush of the Niners. They're a team to get after you. You couldn't get pressure on the quarterback because of the field conditions, so still no excuse, but you're winning that game. And then take Seattle. Look at the 12th man last week when they played against Denver. That crowd noise was so loud. You saw Seattle. It was unbelievable. Offsides, false starts, all those things that happened to Denver because of the 12th man. Now you got to go to Levi's. And now the Niner faithful is going to be in that stadium at Levi's Stadium. That place is going to be rocking. Then you're going to see the energy flowing. That defense is going to be hyped. They can't wait to get on the field. Because I'm telling you right now, I love this atmosphere. I love playing at home. And the crowd is going to be rocking, Larry. You know that. And I can't believe you're not taking in consideration that crowd. The crowd's going to be going crazy. The drinks are going to be flowing. That place is going to be, Joey Bosa is going to be doing dancing. The Armstead. I'm telling you, Larry, you get ready today, baby, because you're going to see a celebration. And that Sear Red across the street, you're going to be there, baby.
I'm going.
You going, Daddy.
Week 2. Good to see you, bro. All right, that does it. Thanks to Jim Beam. Thanks to Harris Ranch. Enjoy 49er football. And make sure you listen for 95.7 The Game's post-game show with Alan Stiles and Kyle Madsen. For Low Neal, I'm Larry Krueger. Have a great rest of your Sunday on 95.7 The Game.
That's the sound of a crack in the ceiling found at a home inspection. But with a Realtor by your side, a newfound leak might only cause minor worries. With their expertise, a Realtor can suggest a credit at closing and even connect you to a contractor to help you shore up that leak and alleviate your worries. When it comes to cracks in your plans, the expertise